to discuss further military aid to Ukraine and tackle hybrid threats from facing Europe. Discussions will also focus on enhancing security, strengthening the defence industry and evaluating European readiness in the light of shifting global security dynamics. The meeting, established after the election of US President Donald Trump, serves as a platform to address concerns about the reliability of the United States as an alliance partner. NATO's new joint defence plans have helped diffuse tensions in the alliance, for now allowing for more focused European cooperation. Alison joins us once again. Alison, this group of five, the UK, Italy, France, Germany, and of course the EU foreign leader, a lot of people criticise the European allies for kind of launching this scorched earth policy on Ukraine. Is this and keeping this war going longer than it should? That's what some people think. Is this a sign? Is this meeting a sign that European capitals are preparing for an even longer war, especially as US funding remains uncertain?
I think Europe is definitely preparing for a longer war. You mentioned the 5 countries, 4 of those which are EU, and then you have Britain. Britain is not an EU member, but it is a member of NATO. So this is not just an EU war, it's a European war. Europe wants to defend itself so the conflict doesn't spread any further. And on the one hand, there is criticism that Europe wants to prolong this war, but the Russians have not shown any willingness to talk or to cede any of their demands. They have maximalist demands, which are not acceptable to Ukraine, are not acceptable to Europe. So Russia is pressing on, it's escalating its attacks. They've made threats about nuclear weapons, and it would be very foolish on the part of Europe and NATO to do nothing about this. So that as much as anything, this meeting today in Berlin is about preparing both what is going to happen next. I'm sure there's a lot of intelligence on the ground about what Russia's plans are, but also Russia has this two-pronged war on Europe. They have the war against Ukraine and the threats against NATO members of violation of NATO airspace, but they also have this hybrid war, which Europe has been very slow, the West has been very slow about waking up to it. But this week, Europe launched something called the Democracy Shield, which is ways that Europe will counter Russian disinformation, because it might sound very vague, a hybrid war, but Russia's hybrid war actually aims to undermine democratic societies, liberal democracies, make citizens distrustful of their governments, and basically make people actually want to be in a dictatorship. That's their aim. Putin, the Kremlin, they dislike democracy. They dislike the West. They dislike Europe. And Europe is in a position, it's not a position of attack, it's a position of trying to defend itself. And particularly because under Donald Trump, the American position has changed somewhat. America hasn't withdrawn, but it is less reliable than it was before.
Yes.
Europe has to organize its own defense, both in terms of the hybrid war and also possible escalation of Russia's military war against Ukraine.
Yeah, and Alison, of course, this Western support, some would also say it's becoming much more fragmented. Of course, you see the United States, no one knows what Donald Trump is thinking at any given time. Of course, you have Hungary, Viktor Orban, who have openly do not associate with all the European Union's letters coming out in support of Kyiv. Does this meeting here reveal genuine unity, or are cracks widening behind the scenes, do you think?
No, I think we have the coalition, the willing, which is a bit larger, but I think this is the core defense of Europe. And okay, Britain is not in the European Union, but it is a key member of NATO, and it has very good intelligence there. And also, Britain has played a very important, a crucial role in the defense of Ukraine from day number one. So I think it's like this is the core defense of Europe, both on the hybrid and the military. These are the countries that count. These are the countries that will make the decision. So I think that Europe is firming up. We have dissenting voices, as you said, in Hungary and Slovakia, and they will remain. So the bigger countries, the countries which are very clear about European defense, they have to unite. and they have to forge ahead with defense of Europe because they can't rely on the wider partnership. Of course, countries like I am Romania plays a key role, but they're not the decision makers in the defense of Ukraine.
Yes, Alison Mutler, thank you very much. Fascinating stuff. Really appreciate you giving your time for us here on NewsX World. We now move on, and in a significant diplomatic move, French President Emmanuel Macron is set to host Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky in Paris on November the 17th. The meeting, announced by Macron's office, aims to reaffirm France's steadfast commitment to Ukraine's security amidst ongoing challenges. The two leaders are expected to discuss a range of topics, including bilateral cooperation in energy, economic matters and defence. This high-level meeting underscores France's ongoing support for Ukraine's sovereignty and stability as the war with Russia continues to impact the region. Macron and Zelensky had previously met in Brussels, where they discussed broader European issues, including defence and migration. The Paris talks are expected to further strengthen ties between the two nations. We are now joined by Shruti Dasgupta. She's an international affairs expert and she joins us live from New Delhi. Shruti, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, this is a classic example of unwavering European support for Ukraine, particularly headed by Emmanuel Macron, who has been a big leader in regards to standing in Zelensky and maintaining that idea of European security. Your thoughts on this upcoming meeting? We are going to see Zelensky in Paris in just 3 days. What are the issues that you think are going to be tackled here, and what is there to address?
Greetings, Thomas. Thank you so much for inviting me. What I do understand is that Zelensky is headed for his 9th visit, I believe this is, to meet with Macron since 2022. And the stated cause is energy cooperation and future of security of Ukraine and so on and such. But there are also rumors under the geopolitical spheres that we hear that are saying that the allies, European allies, are also asking questions about the large-scale corruptions that are happening inside Ukraine. And Zelensky's associates have been found involved in it, and there have been resignations also regarding it. And so I believe Europe is looking to find a way to solving the entire Ukraine problem. They know that this is heading into the winter. They know that there has been a large-scale attack on almost every district. I think these are the words of some of the Ukrainian ministers themselves, that every district is now facing large-scale attacks by Russia. And although the Long Neptune and the other drones have managed to dent at least one particular region in Russia to where the attacks led to a declaration of emergency in that particular region, this is not enough. While Ukraine is losing bleeding soldiers, losing resources, facing rollouts of blackouts and all, there is no solution, and the winter is setting in, and it's going to be very, very hard for the Ukrainians. And the war, if it continues in these winter months, maybe Russia will grab more land and they will be not able to prevent it. So while the drone technology has delivered a massive victory in terms of the amount of damage that they are able to inflict on Russia itself, it does not change the tide of war. It just manages to pause it for a while. And Russia is in a meat grinder war. It's gaining more and more territories. And if this continues, more than half of Ukraine will be lost by the time the winter is done with. So until and unless Zelensky wants to lose not just his elections or his political standing, until and unless Zelensky wants to lose the identity of Ukraine as a whole nation, he should gear up for a hard winter and tough negotiations on ground and probably accept a land for peace deal.
Yes, Shruti, do stay with us as we have further updates coming out of the region. The United States has designated 4 European entities as global terrorist groups, accusing them of being violent Antifa groups. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced that the German-based group of Antifa Ost, along with groups in Italy and Greece, will be labeled specially designated global terrorists. The move is part of President Trump's broader campaign to confront political violence linked to left-wing extremist movements. Rubio said the groups espouse anarchist and Marxist ideologies using violence to incite political change. The US also target other Antifa groups worldwide. Antifa OST has been linked to attacks in Germany and Budapest, and the US aims to disrupt their operations and deny them funding. Okay, Shruti joins us once again to discuss this. Shruti, your thoughts on Donald Trump labeling these 4 left-wing Marxist, Antifa-linked groups terrorist organizations? What does that mean for those groups going forward, even if they are across the ocean?
Antifa by definition is anti-fascist, and what this means is that it is completely left-wing, not at all nationalistic in nature. It is more liberal, more Marxist, more anti-capitalism, more anti-Christianity also in some places. So this particular movement has home issues for Trump, as in we've seen the Los Angeles riots, we've seen Chicago burn. So these particular movements have home ground here in USA, and they find that first, starting from abroad, if they do that and label a few of them as international groups of terrorism, they will be allowed to then snoop into the working of similar groups inside USA. So they will be able to use financial surveillance, digital surveillance, and oversight tools over American citizens who are supporting not just these bodies internationally, but also locally. So this is an outside-in attempt to kind of stop the movements of particularly very violent people who seem to adopt an ideology as a cause of action, which results in a Charlie Kirk-like event where a person is shot for his views. And that can't be acceptable in any kind of world democracy. So this move has broader linkages. But for Greece, I believe the problem is a little difficult because from what I understand of Greece politics, a few of these Antifa people are contesting elections. And when they are politicians on their own, how do you designate them as terrorists? Either if you do that, then the entire party gets designated as terrorists. And Greece, if that particular region has an Antifa head, then you end up calling that entire region very badly influenced or is completely out of control of the Western ideology of democracy. So the question becomes slightly more complex. It's not as simple as just calling somebody extreme leftists bordering towards terrorism and calling all Antifa and using all your tools to snoop into people's life and kind of control your internal problems by focusing on the international ones.
Yes, Shruti Dasgupta, thank you very much for taking the time and joining us. It's fascinating stuff. We now move on, and the European Union has approved a major change to its customs rules, ending the duty-free exemption for parcels valued under €150. It means that all goods entering the EU will now face customs duties from the first euro, bringing small online purchases in line with existing VAT rules. EU officials say that the move is designed to address the surge in low-cost imports, particularly from Asia, where they argue has been undermining local businesses and overwhelming customs access. Meanwhile, Denmark's Minister for Economic Affairs says the reform is aimed at creating a fairer and more consistent system for consumers and retailers across Europe. This update is part of a broader effort to modernise EU customs procedures as online shopping continues to grow rapidly across the region. Let's listen in to what Denmark's Minister for Economic Affairs had to say.